Hello, beautiful humans. There's a woodpecker just up there pecking away. So if you hear the kind of tap tap tapping, that's what it is. Yeah, just been sitting with the absence of shame and fear lately, which is a really unusual thing for me. So I thought I'd talk about shame and fear during awakening. For me, shame was very, very predominant, as was fear. And I wonder if that's the case for other people. Maybe it will be helpful to you to hear me speak about it from my own perspective. But I feel when it comes to awakening that these two things are quite linked. And to explain that, I guess I want to kind of break shame down into three different categories. The first being kind of understandable, accountability oriented shame. So, when we start to release our identification with mind and therefore the contents of mind are much clearer to see and to recognize as such, we usually have this upwelling of past experiences, traumas, emotions, and actions. And so this first category of shame really sits into that, there has actually been an action that I've done that required some accountability. But in lacking that clarity around accountability at that point in my life, there was probably a bunch of shame and it got suppressed. And now, due to this clearer seeing, it's rising up. It's really, it's like a cork in a bottle as well, because there's just, one or two remembered situations, but they're connected to this whole vessel full of that emotion. And then the second category of shame still kind of sits in that space of like the upwelling of past karmic patterns or past samskaras that are more to do with being humiliated or harmed by others in such a way that created patternings of shame. So this is like where actually our own accountability wasn't being called for, but we were having other people's accountability projected onto us for their own discomfort with feeling shame or accountability. And then there's this third category of what I call shame, but perhaps is a little bit more nuanced than that, of the annihilation of the ego. And here is we're not annihilating anything, because ego is really being subsumed by, or at least that's how I understand it, and that's how I've been taught. And I really enjoy these teachings of this idea of it's subsumed by beingness, by awareness, and by truth. However, the actual sensation physically and just like penetrating down into your very bones is of death, of annihilation. So this is the link between shame and fear, that this particular shame is like the humiliation of the ego. And I use that term humiliation in connection with its root word of hummus, of earth, of like bringing the ego back down to earth, bringing it back down onto a level with all that is, so that it's no longer in its state of sense of superiority or the inverted state of inferiority. And I think that triggers a very particular experience of what physiologically for me felt like overwhelming shame. And so these two things arrived in tandem throughout my process, and probably will in the future. I guess, like, not experiencing it at this point in time doesn't discard that at all. I have no expectations. um, but this like in tandem arrival of just utter terror, like the fear of annihilation, alongside this all-encompassing, full-bodied, overwhelming torrent of shame and humiliation. Because the ego at this point in the process, or at many points in the process when this comes up, is not wanting to die, hence the fear, and at the same time is also being seen in all of its like falsity and untruth, and that is creating this overwhelming torrent of shame. And for me, the awakening process has really been an intense melting pot of all three versions of this shame. Just, for whatever reason, this human had a really good mix, karmically really great, potent mix of both lacking accountability in my own actions, my own life, having other people's lack of accountability projected onto me. And those, we know those two things are linked, when you look at the patterns of trauma, and yeah. And then, the resistance to the subsuming of the ego, resulting in all of this shame and fear simultaneously. So it's really, really tough, and very difficult to explain, because particularly, the third type of shame arises without explanation. It doesn't necessarily have story tied to it, or at least if there's an urge to connect our own narratives to that, it's a moment in time where we're really seeing through those narratives. And so the sensation is just like raw physiological experience of those emotions. And for me, that at different points in time was profoundly debilitating, like stuck in bed for days, debilitating, or complete meltdown, implosion in the presence of other people, debilitating, with no clear explanation and no clarifiable activator for why it was happening. And I guess, retrospectively, I think that there's a real need when we are undertaking an awakening process, like as soon as we recognize what's going on, to start to be able to discern these types of things, like to detect what is beginning to well up early enough, maybe to get ourselves into safer spaces to undergo the process, or to experience and feel what we're feeling, both for our own well-being, not having other people kind of unnecessarily interfere in something that is just a deeply spiritual unfolding and doesn't require specific type of intervention. But also, in certain cases, to make it a safer space for the people around us as well, for friends or partners or housemates or whoever might be kind of close ones in our lives, that we're not unnecessarily disturbing their own unfolding. Because it's for someone who's not going through it, it's utterly confounding, and they're not necessarily going to understand. But that's another story that we can get really caught up in, as well, as like, no one understands me, no one there's other layers of this identification with self that kind of come in during these times that try and co-opt the process or turn it into another me story. So it's complex, but yeah, I guess like that's the first thing, is just, it took me quite a long time to work out what it was that I was really experiencing. And even until very recently, my mind was still trying to attach socially acceptable stories to it as well, like, yeah, trauma and neurodivergence and that whole gamut of Western pathological explanation, which can be really helpful in certain situations, and really supportive for folks to be able to get the support that they need when they are genuinely experiencing those types of differences. But I think for me, as much as a lot of those labels were helpful at different times in my life, they don't really kind of cut to the quick of what lies underneath all of the seeming symptomology. And for me, these sort of implosions, and that's, how I would describe it when things like this absolute shame and fear arise. It's like a black hole. Like your whole universe is literally imploding into a black hole inside you because everything that was this self is just being sucked into nothingness. And in the space of that nothingness is literally space, which, when it's seen for what it truly is profoundly perfect. But if we're unused to that level of spaciousness, it can feel like an overwhelming void or emptiness. Anyway, I'm weaving around this so much, just trying to kind of tease out the flavor of what awakening shame and fear might be, compared to, like, I did something shitty and now I feel ashamed, or someone's trying to diss me and make me feel bad even though I know I'm not doing anything wrong. Very, very different. Very different. What I've found over time, apart from like starting to identify it early and kind of getting myself into a cocoon of some variety, even if it's in a public place, like sometimes the cocoon is, I need to go to the bathroom, and then you're just sitting on a shut toilet seat for 15 minutes, quietly imploding. Yeah, so, I mean, other than that, being able to relax your body or at least inviting what relaxation is available to arrive, because there will be parts of the holding and the resistance that is not yet releasable. And there's no problem with that. One of my kind of points of sticklerism as a yoga teacher is hearing people leading classes be like, just let go or just relax, or it's not that simple because our complex organisms are going to be trying to protect their ego structures as much as possible. And when that's been built in by trauma to survival, like literal survival mechanisms, yeah, we have to be really gentle and patient and allowing of what kind of tension or holding or protectiveness or resistance is still present. But where possible, to release what's ready to be released, to not hold the excess unnecessarily. And for me, at this point, certainly not at the start, when something starts to arise, I put my awareness right in the center of it. That wherever the sensation is, or however the sensation is unfolding, whether it's located or it seems to be spread across all of existence, just really like plunging to the core of that experience, and allowing the unfolding of the experience, even if it objectively feels or subjectively feels profoundly painful. There's a running through that facilitates, and can really support the dissipation, and also support the recognition of how it is actually, like the form of what is coming up is actually undifferentiatable from the non-substance of the great one, but it takes time, and again, if there's a strong history of trauma in the personal life, or some particularly firm karmic patterns or intergenerational woundings, stepping right into the center of that sensation may very well feel far, far too much. So it is possible to, the way I visualize it is, if there's a park or a room or some sort of definable space, and you could visualize where that sensation is, where the shame or the fear is, and then where you would choose to stand in relationship to it within that defined space. And if you're imagining it like a room, like maybe it's even actually, I'm not going to be in the room with it, I'm going to stand on the other side of the door, and that's fine. There's no right or wrong. But to kind of like get a sense of where can I comfortably tolerate being in relationship to this arising, and to stand in that place and go through the process of relaxing what can be relaxed physiologically, like very literally, like how can I relax into my body, to the degree that I'm able in this place. And then once it feels as if there's enough softness and yielding, to take like one step closer to the sensation of shame or fear, and then to go through that relaxation process again. So it's like inching step by step towards the heart of the intense overwhelm, with a conscious connectivity with body sensation and body relaxation. So that's sort of the method that I worked with for a very long time, until it got to a point where, I'd say mostly now, almost exclusively, I'm putting the almost in there because you never know what comes up, right? Something may arise tomorrow that really tests this, but almost exclusively, the whatever comes up is just like this raw sensory energy, and I can step into the center of that and be with it, with and in it, to be with and in it until it naturally dissipates. So there's no kind of like action of letting go, and like letting go in the way that it's often received in our society now, is like, this is the me that's letting go, which just brings us back into that self-identification realm. I'm not the one letting go, because the I is disintegrating and being subsumed and consumed by the one. So it's to be with and in as it is, and allow that isness to unfold in its natural timeline, and when and how possible to yield and soften through the body, and when and how possible to bring a state of curiosity to that being with an inness, to see if the unity, the isness, the oneness, the emptiness, the all that isness is visible in it, or it is visible as that. It's so hard to put words to any of these things. But yeah, shame and fear, it can be very, very, very strong. Very strong. And the organism survives. This body survives. The concept of self more and more degrades and turns into the compost for the ecosystem of unity, of interbeing. So it's still, the energy of it is still there, but it's no longer my energy. It's not my ego or my self. It's a unique expression of truth, and it's undertaking a refining process so that it doesn't mistake itself. I know that I'm releasing through this medium some core aspects of shame and fear, because there was definitely some kind of karmic frictions around allowing my spiritual beingness to be visible. And there's a lot of reasons for that. I mean, we can look at intergenerational and reincarnational reasons in terms of religious persecution or, you know, witch burnings and things like that, but even just growing up in a family that was deeply Catholic and yet not really engaged in the mystic contemplation of what that actually meant. And then having undergone a lot of Western psychopathological treatment for what was considered a lack of connection with reality. I'd probably look at my psychologist straight in the eye now and just be like, which one is reality, actually? So, you know, things drop away. Some of what drops away are things that we really, really want to hold on to. And some things that drop away are things that we were carrying and we're really grateful it's gone. The skillfulness is not in anything else on this path apart from being able to just release. And that's not let go or push away. It's allowing the natural divestment when it arises. And if we're willingly relinquishing what's being taken, it's a much more easeful journey. Thanks for listening. If you are happy to comment, like, or subscribe, that's awesome. It helps my videos be seen by other people that might enjoy them or get some value out of them. Yeah, and I hope you have a beautiful day wherever you are.